Welcome to the Life of Being podcast, where we talk about all things life from a healthcare perspective all around the world. I'm your host, Kelly Tan, and in each episode, we'll dive into stories, science, and wisdom to help you live well, think deeper, and express life fully. Let's begin. Today, we are excited to be having Dr. Billy Chow joining us from Australia. Dr. Billy is a chiropractor, business consultant, and educator with nearly 3 decades of experience in healthcare and business growth. He is the current president of the Australian Chiropractors Association and program coordinator at the Australian Chiropractic College. Having owned multiple practices and advised hundreds of clinic owners worldwide, he's passionate about helping practitioners build thriving businesses through clear strategy, strong system, and effective leadership. Dr. Billy, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you. It's a massive privilege to be on your show. How are you today?
I'm good and good. How's things for you so far?
Yeah, it's been wonderful. Absolutely. I was just having a chat to you before about
Yes.
it's been busy at the ACC at the Australian Chiropractic College. We've just recently gone through 2 weeks of student exams, and so now that that's over, it's a bit of some breathing space for the academics. Yeah, so
Yes,
it's
yes.
lovely.
That's not your main thing you do. You still do like consulting, so you're pretty busy most of the time yourself. Go back
Yeah,
to, yeah.
I do. Yeah, I kind of have these sort of multiple personalities. So yeah, like I'm an academic. I'm program coordinator for the diploma level at the Australian College of Chiropractic in Adelaide, and then as I said, I'm currently the president of the Chiropractic Association of Australia. We're the peak body that represents chiropractors in Australia. We have over 3,000 chiropractic members and over 1,200 student members as well. So we're very strong
Wow.
there. Yeah, and then when I have some spare time, my main job when I have some spare time is I'm a coach and consultant for chiropractors and the healthcare space in general. Yeah, so
Take us back to what got you into chiropractic and then also your journey towards transitioning more towards business consulting, taking political stands, and also helping in the education system in Australia and worldwide,
yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, look, how long do we have? Because I'm an old person. So, okay. So back long time ago, and I still do. Like, I love martial arts movies, like Jackie Chan and Jet Li and Bruce Lee and that kind of stuff as well. And so, growing up, I was an active child. I was very much in that fantasy mode of wanting to do everything that kung fu fighters could do. One thing that I did, which kind of like was the lead domino that sort of got me to where I am now, and that was that I tried to be this sort of martial arts expert, jumped off this fence to try and hold on to this I think it was a tree branch or something like that, and then I slipped and then I fell and hurt myself. And then at that time, like, my parents were generally quite sort of medically orientated, obviously, being an Asian background, they're very allopathic in how they saw things. But I think one of their friends or one of our neighbors said, well, maybe you should take Billy to the chiropractor. And so from an early age, I got to experience chiropractic. In the beginning, it was to do with the fact that I fell over from trying to be, Jackie Chan. But then, luckily, the chiropractor I went to, a guy called Anthony Capiaghi in Melbourne, he was an amazing chiropractor and sort of definitely showed me, what chiropractic was. And he eventually sort of got me into studying chiropractic. Yeah, so that's kind of my story. Yeah.
That's exciting. You did mention like being Asian, sometimes they have their certain values or perspective. Does that affect you from you growing up? Do they perceive things differently compared to where you are, or how does that work for you?
Oh, I think it's across lots of different cultures as well. And it's something to do with just in general the way society is conditioned and how it's framed. And that is that for many of us, whether you're Chinese or whether you're Australian or whether you live in Malaysia, it's definitely, you kind of grow up in a society that is definitely more dominated by going to see a doctor and maybe getting some sort of medicine, all that kind of stuff as well. Having said that, though, I think for both you and I, Kelly, that our Asian background and our culture does lend itself to some more natural ways of sort of taking care of us when it comes to our health and our well-being. But certainly, well, I'm being very general here, but my parents wanted me to be either a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant, or something like that, uh, and whether chiropractic was on their list, but I ended up being a healthcare practitioner, and they were happy. Yeah.
I mean, that's like the typical stereotype, isn't it? So you're either like doctor, a lawyer, engineer, or a failure, isn't it? So
Yeah,
that's pretty
absolutely.
much all
Yeah.
across. How do you got into eventually transitioning, focusing a lot more on helping other business and clinic owners to grow their business? How did that
Yeah. So
pan
look,
out?
yeah, it started. Look, I think it started early, quite early on. And that was that my father was an entrepreneur. My father owned businesses, and so in many situations, like you end up kind of living the life of what your parents did because dad worked like long hours in his business, and I helped him like pack boxes and all that kind of stuff as well. And so I got to see what it was like to have to wear all the hats. Had to do the hiring and the firing and the training and the sales and the marketing, etc. So from an early age, my dad was one of my role models, so I got to sort of see how what it took to be successful. Also, some of the challenges, or many of the challenges and the setbacks that happen when it comes to business. And I always say to my clients, I always say to people that ask me this question, that there's no real difference whether you're a chiropractor or a physiotherapist or your hairdresser or an accountant. The business is business. The fundamentals of marketing and sales and retaining clients and getting your brand and you out there, a lot of that is very much the same across all businesses. It's just different, like it's making it contextual to the profession. And so I started very, very early on. And so obviously I grew up with that. I had a love and a passion for that. And so, when I started my own practice, when I became a chiropractor and had other multiple practices as I moved forward, I think eventually it led me to wanting to do something and give back to the profession in a way that I could maybe provide some leadership. And so that also got me onto the boards of back then it was called the Chiropractors Association of Australia, whereas now it's called the Australian Chiropractic Association. But yeah, it's changed its name since when I first started. But jumping on the boards, jumping on committees, getting involved that way as well. And then I had as I said to you, had a huge passion to help people. And so using my experience both, from life and also in my own practice and seeing what worked, what didn't, I use that as a lever and as a way to kind of like help other people. And then that sort of cascaded to where I am now.
And from your experience seeing like, mediocre, good, bad, successful practices and businesses, what would you say is the number one setback for business to grow and sustain and be a thriving business?
I think there's a number of things. Okay. So look, the list is long, but but the key areas, I think it's like shifting from a practitioner to being a business owner. All right. So we do more and more of it. Like certainly at the college where I teach at the ACC, we really have a lot of units and a lot of areas where we teach our students and to graduate them with knowledge around marketing and business and communication, etc. But if you think about in general, as a healthcare practitioner, there's very little kind of education around how to run a business, how to wear all those hats when you get catapulted into either running your business or having to grow your business as an associate. And so that's one of the areas. And so making sure that we have chiropractors that are great chiropractors clinically, but also at the same time that you can't help people, you can't provide the care and to really make an impact on your community if your business is not successful. Okay, so there's that. And then I think the other thing is looking at ways where our brand is our biggest thing. Okay, and this is something that I've worked on both at the association level, but also with my clients and also just in general with chiropractors. And that is that there's something that really needs to happen around making sure that people understand who you are. Okay, and whether that's chiropractic in general as a profession, but also in your practice, like in your own suburb or like in your own 5 kilometers, making sure that people know who you are, and that's your brand. How you differentiate yourself from other chiropractors and how you differentiate yourself from other health professions, so that if someone comes and sees you, they understand where you stand and what you do as well. So there's a number of things. And then I think the other thing is giving yourself time. And I think that we try and rush. And we live in a society where a couple of taps on your phone, we have this immediate gratification of ordering Uber Eats or getting a car, or whatever it is, Amazon, in the next day delivery because you have Amazon Prime. And so we grow up in this society where we want things now. In business, it's not always the case. Like in many cases, it's the long game. It's looking at what we can do that's going to build step by step, strengthen our business, get your brand out there, but also making sure that we retain our clients. All those things take time rather than just quick fixes.
There's no process that doesn't take time, isn't it? So it's just
Oh, well, hey, it's principle number 6,
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The shift from being just a practitioner to the shift to actually being an owner. What sort of mindset they need to actually have that you think that is very key to their transitioning?
Yeah, well, I think that just strengthening and developing your mindset around growth and success. And I always say to people that you can have all the tools in the toolbox. And really, when you think about it, in 2026, right now, as we're recording this interview, anyone just jumps on YouTube or subscribes to a newsletter, looks on social media, and there's so many people showing you, telling you tips and tricks on how to do things. Like really, if you think about it, there's an endless supply of strategies and tactics that you can get for free. But the challenge for most people is not necessarily the ideas, because ideas are easy. Ideas are very, very plentiful. It's the implementation, it's the doing of those ideas. And so I think that that's where the mindset is. It's kind of like, rather than just searching for the next shiny object or having a mindset where you just think that the next thing's going to help you grow, cut back on that. Be discerning, stop, pause, and start to realize that you more than likely already have enough tools in your toolbox, but are you using them? And are you using them specifically for the right job? Are you trying to hammer with a screwdriver, or are you trying to, that's obviously a silly analogy, but it's very, very true. A lot of people have all these tools, and often they're not using them correctly, or they're trying to get like multiple tools, upon multiple tools to try and fix something, when they really just should have slowed down and start to be discerning. And so that mindset around slowing down and using that sort of growth mindset, that success mindset around what you have right now, and it's starting just to push the first lever. What's that lead domino? Like I always say, don't worry about domino number two, because you can't worry about domino number two until you've pushed the first domino. But most people start thinking about domino number 50 before they've even pushed the first domino.
And that's like a very important concept that you also talked about previously when we had a conversation, finding which one is the lead domino. Is this something that you've came up with yourself per se? And like, how would someone know that, okay, this is my lead domino out of all the different things I need to do? What is step we need to take?
Yeah, look, I wish I came up with it, but no, like I learned it from one of I did some coaching and mentorship program with a guy called Tom Billiard. He's a guy that if you search him, he built a billion-dollar company making protein bars and like supplements and that kind of stuff. And he's also done a lot of other things as well. So, and one of the things that stuck with me around what he taught was like this whole lead domino aspect. So I steal it from him, and there's other people who have said this, but for me, it really stuck, and it's true. And that is that some people call it your next logical step. Some people call it like, what's the next thing that you have to do before the next step, or a ladder. I love the whole lead domino. And it comes back to also, for many of us, it's important to goal set. The research shows that goal setting allows us to succeed more, that people that do goal set, like, they are going to achieve more. But the challenge with most people is it's easy to goal set because it's, for many of us, it's writing something in a journal on paper. Okay. Those words are very easy to write. I want to grow my practice in the next 6 months to, how many patients visits a week, or, I want to attract how many, whatever it is. It's very easy to say those things. But then for most of us, we do that goal setting, and then we look out in the horizon, and then we look at where our feet are, and we get scared, and we go, oh my gosh, like where I am now to where I want to be, it's such a big gap, that massive chasm. And so it causes people to either freeze, they have massive imposter syndrome, they'll end up either not doing anything, or they go back to that whole thing where they're looking for this shiny object. Oh, what's the next thing I can do? What's the next thing I can do? And so that whole lead domino goes back to, at my feet, the lead domino is what's my first step. Rather than worry about the outcome, the output, but worry about the inputs. Like, what do I need to do? Like, how many steps do I need to do this week to get me to the next phase? Like, even if it's as simple as, like, I'll give a good example. Often in practice, we get challenges when it comes to maybe missed appointments, or people that cancel their appointments, that kind of stuff. And there's a number of elements and issues around why that may happen. And so rather than just worry about, oh my gosh, okay, we had a team meeting, and I've told the team that we want to reduce missed appointments and cancellations by 20% by the next quarter. Okay. That can be quite a big jump. We can worry about that. But instead of worrying just about that big jump, think about, okay, what can we do now? Like, and that could be, let's have a look at our conversations. What are we saying, when it comes to our communications with our clients? What are we saying when it comes to our reported findings? And what are we doing in our progress reports? Like when it comes to people not booking in or missed appointments, there's all those different things. Like, what's the lead domino that can actually provide us the next step?
You're also the teaches students like business and marketing in the ACC.
Yeah, yes, yeah. I mean, I've jumped in and out of like different units, and I teach, but yeah, I have definitely. We've graduated 2 cohorts already at the ACC, which is fantastic. And we've got 2 campuses, so that, like for a college, for an education institute that just opened in 2021, I think, or I think it was, 2020. It's gone so quickly. We've graduated 2 cohorts. We're about to graduate, our 3rd coming up to their 2nd semester, for their final year. Yeah. So I've taught them business, marketing, communications, like a number of those sort of elements to help them graduate to be great chiropractors. challenges.
What would be one thing that you would want them to take away knowing you know, as a lecturer or as you as a person?
Oh wow, that's a great question, and quite deep as well. Like, so I generally am passionate about the students and teaching. Okay, like it's academia and teaching draws you like so you're either attracted to it or you have an opportunity and it's not right for you. For me, Pat Sim gave me the opportunity to do it, and through that, I have really grown to love that, to educate and to take these students on that journey, because it's not necessarily the information I provide for them. And hopefully, I do provide great information and they carry that with them through their graduation and, the years beyond that. But it's really like being able to be part of their journey. And so I feel really blessed that they've allowed me and the college, and Pat Sim to allow me to be part of their journey. And so every student that goes through, I really enjoy teaching, but also seeing how they grow. And it's not necessarily growing just from what I teach, but just overall, you see them grow from something that is, when they're in first year and they're just doing the diploma subjects and they're getting a taste of it, to then, like, I see the fifth years, coming up to going on to placement next semester. And I started them in diploma, and I'm like, wow, these guys just got through their OSCE exams and they're really clinical and critical thinkers, and they're making decisions, and they're starting to mature. And with all those different things, those things are what really makes it passionate for me to actually be a teacher.
It's like it's not really growing your own kids, but you're like taking care of like all these kids
Yeah.
and growing up until like being an adult in a way, isn't it?
Absolutely, that's a great analogy. I've got three beautiful kids, but I also think that the kids that, well, I say kids, but like they're students, they're adults, but the students that I teach, they're kind of also like I feel like quite a sort of like a, please don't, hopefully listeners don't get this the wrong way, but sort of almost like a father sort of thing, where I'm taking them on a journey. And I think every teacher, every person that has the opportunity to teach, feels this sort of bond with the students to want to help them and grow so that they can actually, develop. So yeah, that's a really cool thing about it.
And if I ask them, like, who is Billy Chow and what is one thing that you learned from them, what do you think they will say?
Oh wow, that's another great question. Look, I think I don't take things too seriously, in the sense that the way I teach is that it's my life, and what I say is an open door. So like I often use my own personal experiences. I often use like my own stories about what I do and etc. I guess for them, they see that there's a level of transparency, and then also I think that for me, I see them very, very early on, like they are my colleagues. That they may not have been graduated yet. They may not have got the clinical and the business, and I guess the overall skills of being a chiropractor, but I treat them like a colleague. And so it's like a level playing field. It just so happens that that you do need to get through certain hurdles throughout the 5 years at the college to get graduated and to get accredited, etc.
You did mention that your dad was a huge inspiration for you to
Mm.
explore and doing entrepreneurial business, being a consultant. First of all, what was one thing you learned from your dad that you've embodied up until now and you want to instill in your three kids? And
Yeah.
also, what drives you now being your dad, now taking all this different responsibility? What is your why in what you do?
Yeah, look, I have a number of whys, and so I guess the big why, I think, and I think it comes down to the three levels of leadership. There's like self leadership, leading yourself first, then you lead others, and then you lead organization. I think that my self leadership aspect of why is that, for me, it's wanting to make sure that I can be the best person that I am in all aspects. And look, we're not perfect. I think that the imperfection is a perfection in life, and so that's knowing that like nothing's ever going to be perfect, but making sure that you're striving and making sure that you're constantly looking at how you could do better. And so for me, my biggest why for myself is to go, okay, well, what can I do that allows me to continually improve, whether it be as a father, as a partner, as an academic, as a leader, as a coach, as a president of the association. And then my other obviously why is to provide a life that is, I guess, has clarity, there's certainty, and there's hope, for my family as well. So that whether it be lifestyle, whether it be offering them opportunities for them to be educated and grow, etc., and providing them throughout. So there's that. And then the bigger picture, the big sort of other sort of leading organization, leading other why, is that I've chosen to be in situations where, even though I'm not in practice seeing people and seeing patients in the community, I am impacting the profession in other ways. And that's obviously through through educating their minds of chiropractors so they become great chiropractors. And then it's supporting chiropractors and growing and to advocate for the profession in Australia through my leadership role at the association. And then with my coaching, it's helping chiropractors in their business. It's actually really grow and to thrive and to be able to have a better impact and a greater impact on their community as well. So hopefully that answers your question. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. And like sometimes, I'm not sure if you're the one who mentioned to me or someone mentioning that chiropractic is more than just what you do in the practice. There's also like,
Oh,
helping out in the schools, politics, all those different things,
yeah,
international
I think
things like,
I
yeah.
think we did mention that. Yeah, and I was actually talking about this with a conversation earlier on before this interview, and that was we got into a deep conversation around both internal and external validation. And so
Mhm.
like it's so much of our world, and it's not just our profession, but in general, and
Yes.
and in particular, I've seen this a lot with healthcare practitioners, whether you're a doctor or a specialist or a chiropractor or whatever, is that we are a lot of people are defined externally about because of their profession. Oh, I'm a chiropractor, I'm a doctor. Whereas like more importantly is the internal validation and what we are, and that is internally who am I as Billy Chow? I think we mentioned that who am I? I'm, as I said, I'm a father. I'm a husband. I've got all these other things that are going on in my life, and that being a chiropractor and back then being clinical practice was just one part of it. And I think that there can be a challenge. There can be a certain element of stress and anxiety when, for example, if someone chooses not to be in practice, there's this, almost, and this is how, like for me personally, and I've spoken about this before in other interviews and with other
Yes.
people, so I'm not hiding it, that I did go through quite a high level of anxiety and stress and like sort of losing who I was because, for many, many years, and obviously, I was a chiropractor, and when I stopped practicing, I was already on boards and I was already doing things that people saw that I was not elevated to in the profession, but they knew who I was. And then so when I stopped actually being in clinical practice, I straight away fell into this sort of situation where I was like, oh my gosh, are my colleagues, is the profession going to look at me in less than, in a sublux
Mm,
light because I'm no longer in practice? And then I had to kind of dig my way out of that because at the end of the day, it's not the external validation, it's that internal validation. And if anything, I think that experience got me to be even stronger to look at what I could do for a bigger and broader picture of the profession rather than just being in practice. Not that just being in practice is small, but like, what could I do to affect the profession as a whole in Australia, but also, with the education and also with my coaching. Yeah.
mm. How did you ultimately found the internal validation and the pace of like your decision in going towards a different direction than what everyone else might do? Like, how did you ultimately overcome that?
Um, oh, with with a lot of trial and tribulation, and yeah, it wasn't easy, like I
Mm,
think that, yeah, there's certainly a big part of me that I look backwards and I go, and I'm generally not someone that sort of like looks backwards too often because I think that there's such a like an amazing life ahead of me, and it's kind of like this whole thing like be in the present because the future you don't know what's going to happen and you can't change the past. But
mm,
if I look back in the past, I do feel that at that time I was also less mature in my brain, in my mind, in my growth mindset, in who I was as a person. And so therefore I probably fell into like external validation and seeing that, like what people thought of me. Whereas now I still suffer from imposter syndrome. Like I think imposter syndrome is something that we all suffer from and it comes and goes. And it's also a really good thing to have because it gives us this sort of this internal validation that, look, we're doing something that's worth doing, because if we didn't feel imposter, then it probably, it's not worth doing. It's like it's
mm,
allowing us to push, beyond our comfort zone. And so to answer that question, like I think that like I had to work through that and to realize that at the end of the day, it really is less about what other people think and more about what I think about myself. And that can also be a difficult and sometimes a hard thing, and with our culture as well. And that is that I did have parents and I did have a family environment where it was like, oh, like you've got to do this, why would you stop doing something where, you were successful, that kind of stuff.
yeah.
And I think that it comes back to, look, at the end of the day, the only person that looks you back in the mirror is yourself. And so that's the person that you have to deal with every day.
And now going along the lines, if you can go back to your younger self, what
Mhm.
advice would you give it to younger Billy?
Oh gosh. Every time I get asked this question, I change it. And I think it's like, so look, the biggest thing for me, and this is only for me, and I'm sure that for some listeners, they'll understand this enough and they'll relate to this, and others they'll go, oh, well, doesn't relate to me. But for me, it's like life is short, meaning that, we're not here forever. We have a finite number of, years, and for many of us, hopefully we live a healthy and a longer life, and some people aren't as fortunate, but it is finite. And so therefore we have to fill it with meaningful, purposeful things that allow us to express ourselves and things that we know that mean things for us. But if I was able to give some advice to the younger Billy, it's like, don't rush everything. Okay. Like even though that we have a finite amount of time on this earth, we don't have to make our everyday life like this whole race to hustle. And I felt like that, certainly in my early years in practice and in my early years as a graduate, I spent a lot of time keeping up with the Joneses, like comparing myself to other people and seeing that how many people, that they saw, what numbers that were they seeing, why wasn't I seeing that? And if I wasn't seeing that, then maybe I should be doing this, and maybe I should be getting some new shiny objects. And so that whole comparatitis, thing where we're comparing other people's things. And I think that for me, if I look back, I wish that I actually got to spend a little bit more time, but just asking those questions about myself. Is this really for me? If I've written down something in my journal, or if I've started something, to go like, is this something that I really want? Or is it because so-and-so is doing it and I think I should be doing this, And so I think that's the biggest thing. Slow down and to be more discerning about the things you choose to do, even though that we all know that life is finite and that we should try and fit as much in as possible.
And also, when we were speaking previously, you did mention that yes, you can write everything down, but you also need to ask this question: is this still relevant to you now? It can be like
Yeah.
something new change and everything, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, like you've got such good memory. Like, yeah, I was mentioning that, yeah, like Dan Sullivan, he wrote the book Who Not How. He's written, like he's got that whole strategic coaching business. One of the things that he talks about is that use procrastination as both your friend and your foe. And so
Mm.
for most people, procrastination is something that is an enemy or a foe because it's bad that we procrastinate. You haven't done this, even though you've written it down and it's been on your to-do list for weeks, months, years. Whereas Dan Sullivan talks about that sometimes procrastination is a good thing. All right. And so, like, if you've got something that you've put on your to-do list and it seems like it keeps reoccurring on your to-do list and you're not doing it, stop, ask yourself, well, is it still meaningful for me? Is it still part of the plan? Like I might have done something because I compared myself to a friend or a colleague, and now that, that they said I should do that, so now I'm doing this. Or I watched a YouTube video or went to a seminar and they said that you should do this. And I was like, yeah, cool. And I got motivated and I said I was going to do it. And then what happens is I procrastinate. What Dan Sullivan says is that stop, read over it, and ask yourself the honest question: do you still want to do it? Is it still meaningful to you? And if it's no, it actually is your friend. You can actually then wipe it off, and it leaves, and now it gives you a gap in your space. It reduces your overwhelm and allows you to have more space. You can do more, or you can actually start to focus on the right things. But if you ask yourself that question, is it still meaningful for me to do this? And you say yes, the next thing to ask is, what is the reason that I've procrastinated? And is it because I don't know what to do? Do I need to ask? Do I need to learn? What's the lead domino? What's the next logical step that I need to do in order for me to get there? If it's still meaningful for me. And then once we get that, then it allows us to catapult ourselves, or to sort of, catalyze the next steps so as to move forward.
Now we're coming towards the end. I can't believe like we've just talked almost towards the end, and like there's so much things to talk about. But I'll do
I
it
know,
another
I
time.
know.
Yeah,
It's
I know it's
yeah,
just
it's
flowing over there. But for those who are interested to knowing more about you, learning about you, maybe potentially working with yourself, where would be the best place to find you then, Billy?
Well, look, like you can find me on social media. Like just look up me up on Billy Chow on Instagram, and then also my website is billychow.io. So BILLYCHOW.io. That's my website. That's got information about what I do with my coaching, how to contact me. But also, like, that's just, as I said, that's one of my hats. And if anyone listening is interested in studying chiropractic in Australia, then they can talk to me as well. I can steer them in the right direction. Or if there are chiropractors in Australia or anywhere in the world, but they want to know more about the association, even for what the board and what I've done and our association has done in terms of growing the membership and the profession, you can reach out. But yeah, I mean, like, one of the things I do, and that's one thing that most people would say, not necessarily students, but generally, my door is always open. I'm always open to anyone asking me questions. I've always got 20 minutes, half an hour to spend with a stranger or someone, just to help them, just to answer some questions. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
And I totally advocate for that. that. So the best way to find you will be your website and also your Instagram link. I'll add all into
Yeah,
the description below. So if anyone is
yeah,
interested, they want to take this conversation further, they'll reach out to you and just step into your door. So
yeah.
before I wrap things up, what would be one phrase, one sentence, or one quote you'd like to leave the listeners to?
Oh. I love it. I love it. Okay, all right. I'm going to leave one, and it's not. It's once again, it's not mine, but it's progress over perfection. Okay, so two quotes: the progress over perfection, because the imperfection is the perfection in life. For us to to try and strive or to wait for perfection, we're not going to get anywhere. So we want to make sure we keep progressing, and that's kind of the similar sort of, I guess, framework to what I always do when it comes to coaching and teaching people. It's that lead domino. It's the inputs, not always the outputs. It's what can you do now, and it's making sure that we're taking one step forward in order for us to move, towards our goals, our outcomes, and our dreams. Yeah.
That is a super, super good way to wrap up the podcast. Thank you so much, Dr. Billy, for sharing your time, your story, your experience with us today. And we look forward to speaking with you again in the future.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me, Kelly.
Thank you for tuning in to the Life of Being podcast. Let us know what is your one key takeaway from this episode. And if this conversation inspired you, share it with a friend who might find it helpful today. Until next time, take care of your health and take care of your being.